Hello, it's HS Media Nerd with something different. Fellow reviewer Star6Wars1 has started a video series called Best of Anime, where you discuss the best stories, characters, and presentations in anime. And it's also a tag video, and I was tagged to make a video as well. While this video was more like a top 10, I personally think that it's kind of hard to rate stories of different subgenres on the same standards. So I decided to do this a little differently, organizing the anime by genres and choosing the best out of that genre. Of course, anime can be sorted into more than one genre, but that's besides the point. The genres that will be featured are action and adventure, comedy, drama, fantasy, romance, science fiction, slice of life, thriller, and my personal favorite anime story of all time. The final one isn't based on any critical appeal, it's more about which story I personally love. Horror isn't included because I literally haven't seen any horror anime. I mean, I guess Parasite counts, but I have nothing to compare it to, so yeah. And no, I don't consider Tokyo Ghoul's anime horror. The manga's a different story, but I'm getting off topic. Also, because this is a tag video, I'll be tagging a few people. I tag Alex the Kami, the Otaku Chick, Mega Run, and Baron J. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get started. Trigun is a treat for action buffs and science fiction lovers alike. It's kind of anime's version of an old western movie, with its mono-y-mono-like attitude and desert-like setting. While the first half is rather episodic, it treats the audience to an array of gunfights showing off how awesome Vashpa Stampede is, and each fight is thrilling in its own right. The second half is a different story, including some fantastic villains and putting more of a focus on developing the characters. It's just a great story, and even if you're not that much of an action fan, I think you'll find something to like. Trigun is a classic anime that is still held in high regard today and certainly deserves its praise. Honorable mentions are Attack on Titan and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. If I were to judge an anime strictly on its comedy, then anything related to Italia would take the cake. I can't think of any other anime that made me laugh harder than this series. And I have so many favorite scenes that it's hard for me to list them in one short video. Then again, it helps that the character cast is phenomenal, and that the character interactions are what makes this show. Who would have thought that using stereotypical traits would create well-defined characters? Its setup also lends itself to a ton of comedic opportunities, which they totally take advantage of. I am excited for its new season, Hetalia: The Beautiful World Twinkle, whenever it comes out anyway. Honorable mentions go to Gekken Shoujo Nozaki-kun and Ouran High School Host Club. I'm going to be perfectly honest here and say that I respect Welcome to the NHK more than I actually like it. Regardless, I still think NHK has one of the best stories in anime compared to other dramas because you don't really see anime like this too often. How many other anime take the entire Hikikimori topic seriously and don't glorify the lifestyle? Yeah, that's right, practically none. You just have shows like No Game No Life. NHK, on the other hand, is surprisingly realistic, which is why it's so good. Its characters are some of the most human I've ever seen in anime, and the dreary atmosphere and colors really do reflect this. The drama also doesn't feel forced or melodramatic, as the trials and tribulations of the characters all reflect their personalities and how they would react to the situations. Now, why I didn't fall in love with this anime, I have no clue. But as a critic, it's hard to ignore this wonderful show. Honorable mentions are my teen romantic comedy Snafu and There She Is. Honestly, are any of you surprised? I've made it no secret that both versions of FMA are pretty much masterpieces in my opinion, though I do prefer 2003. So, how could any other anime take the spot for best fantasy? Everything from the world building, to the pacing, to the messages, to the plot twists, to the wonderful writing in both versions makes basically each episode a joy to watch. While both versions are slightly different from each other, they complement each other greatly. 2003 has a greater focus on the characters, and Brotherhood has more of a focus on world building and the story. However, don't skip either. 2003 helps set the stage for Brotherhood, since the first 12 episodes of Brotherhood are slightly rushed, and that's what FMA 2003 basically covers. Though both stories are still great. Honorable mentions are Yona of the Dawn, Katana Gatari, and Kyoso Giga. Over the course of reading books and watching anime, I've noticed that romance is very hard to write. I've read so many terrible romance novels in my day that I'm burned out of it. Thankfully, this short movie managed to reinvigorate my interest in the romance genre, even if it's for a different medium. This movie knows that it's simplicity that connects viewers to the audience, creating a perfect atmosphere and romance in such a short amount of time that I was actually kind of astonished by how good it was. You see, this movie feels incredibly natural, with the relationship developing from a friendship to a romance over the course of years, and this movie knew exactly what to show to make it convincing. Not to mention that it's a rare specimen that made me cry for more than a few seconds. Honorable mentions are Ouran High School Host Club, Clannad, and Toradora. From the New World story is truly something special in the medium of anime, and in entertainment in general. It's the perfect example of how to do a dystopian utopian story, with fantastic foreshadowing, atmosphere, tone, and pacing. It's also the only story that was able to use time skips effectively, and in a way that helps the progression and the climax. Speaking of, the ending of the show was one of the most satisfying things I've ever seen, and is the main reason it dodged the same fate as Welcome to the NHK for me. I love this show, despite its many problems, but if one aspect can be called flawless, it would be its story. Honorable mentions are Steins Gate and Ergo Proxy. One of my main problems with slice of life anime is the lack of progression in most of them, hence why I've only watched a few anime in this genre. Actually, only like 2. But out of those 2, Barakamon showcases how to do slice of life correctly. There's legitimate character growth in this show, as our protagonist Honda learns that there's more to life than by the numbers calligraphy, and each character he encounters also learns something from him. It's a coming-of-age story at its very best, handled with maturity, which is very rare. The only honorable mention is the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, since I have a backlog of slice of life anime that I really need to watch. The main aspect that thrillers have to nail is unpredictability. Otherwise you can predict what happens and all you do is sit around and wait for your theory to become reality. What fun is that? That is why Baccano is one of the best thrillers I've ever seen. I had no idea where the plot would take me. Yes, it goes by really quickly and is absolutely insane from any standpoint, but the ride is so enjoyable and memorable that it's hard not to be interested in what's happening. Not to mention how freaking addictive this story is. To give you an idea, I watched this in basically one weekend. Yeah, I never marathon anime, but I watched it in like a weekend. Tie that in with one of the most enjoyable casts in anime and great animation, and you've got yourself a show that I personally consider to be a masterpiece of writing. Honorable mentions are Parasite, Durarara, and The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. I know that some of you may be shocked by this choice, and believe me, I kind of am too. I was originally going to put either From the New World or Fullmetal Alchemist in this spot, but after thinking about it, I couldn't put any other anime here but Kara no Kyokai. Yes, I know this series has its narrative shortcomings, like pretentious dialogue and not the best characterization or pacing. Heck, watching the movies out of order is kind of pointless when you think about it, but I think what really makes this my favorite anime story is probably the ending. Like Arcada says, the ending is paramount, and the ending of the 7th movie is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Yeah, it's probably not for everyone, and it does require the audience to piece together the events of the previous movies to understand its relevance, but that's fine with me. I love analyzing pieces of entertainment to understand what it is the show is trying to say, and Kara no Kyokai allowed me to do that by being interpretive, but not so subtle that I couldn't pick up on it. That's what makes it so good in my opinion. So despite its problems, despite its confusing nature, despite its unnecessary dialogue, and despite its lack of clarity, I love this story, and I think it's one of the best that anime has to offer. Well, that's all from me. What are your favorite anime stories? Leave your answer in the comments section, or better yet, continue this tags video series by making your own video and linking it to me. I'd be happy to watch. This is HS Media Nerd, and I'll see you all in my next video. Until then,